Hello, everyone. All right, welcome, everyone. So I'm David Yaron. I'm in the chemistry department at Carnegie Mellon, and one of the people helping to develop and support the Open Learning Initiative chemistry software. And Sam, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I work in the chemistry department with Dave pretty closely. I'm a learning engineer and also work on the development and support for the general chemistry courseware.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Blazer. I recently retired from teaching at Shasta College, where I taught general chemistry for 26 years. I'm now continuing to work on chemistry education stuff and have been working with Dave and Sandy and Hal on general chemistry project for 6 years now or so.
Hi, everybody. My name is Hal Turner. I oversee the support effort at the Open Learning Initiative, so both customer support or technical support, and I'm the person who would help you with any logistic.
So the agenda, we're going to do a brief overview of OLI, move into the general chemistry courseware, talk about both the formative and summative aspects of the software and the courseware, talk about how you can use it to monitor your students' progress in the learning dashboard, various ideas from people on how to take best advantage of this in different types of classrooms. So I'll talk about what I do. Mark will talk about what he does in his class. And we'll close with showing some data we have on effectiveness and use and how you can get access. You can check it out more. The Open Learning Initiative actually was founded in 2001, and it was started to try to design online courseware that was in collaboration between people from the domains, like chemistry, and people from the science of learning and the artificial intelligence groups here at CMU. We're both trying to improve learning, but also get the data we need to make our own materials better and to advance learning science in general. Like, how is it that people learn chemistry? And we'll show you some results at the end that show that I think we're starting to make some real progress on understanding what's happening in classrooms, what the difference between, what are the factors that you can at least look at to see if which of your students are most likely to not do well or to withdraw from it. So one of the things, one of the central ideas in OLI is that we get this data from student learning and we feed it back to the instructors. We use it to improve our own course design. Students can sort of understand how they're doing in the course and so know what they should be spending their time on. And then we have a way to share, to anonymize all the data. It's all collected in an ethical way, but we can share that with researchers to try and discover what can we do to improve learning in these important courses.
Hey, everyone. I'm going to take you through a module in the courseware and point out some of the key features. The content that is covered is the basic topics that are covered in a year's worth of general chemistry, so general chemistry 1 and 2. The courseware is currently being used over 20 institutions. We have community colleges up to R1 universities. The implementation is that most instructors use it to replace their online textbook and homework, and it can be used in a lot of different modalities, in-person, online, hybrid, or flipped classroom. Just going to kind of run down this kind of quickly, and then when we jump into the course, I'll point them out to you. It's easier to see it when we're in the course than just to talk about it. As Dave mentioned, this was adapted from OpenStax. We did do considerable additions in terms of activities and feedback, and we did do some editing of the text as well. We have student-centered measurable learning objectives. One of the comments many instructors and students point out is how well integrated it is. So you have some text, you have activities in there, you have summative assessments, and it's very nice flow. There are a lot of activities. a wide variety of activities. I'll show you examples of interactive examples and slideshows. There's a lot of scaffolding in the course. I'll point that out to you as we go through it. I saw some of you had mentioned you were already using some PhET simulations. We have incorporated the PhET simulations as well. There's targeted and detailed feedback throughout, and there are some adaptive activities as well. And we'll look at the learning dashboard. Okay, so this is the course outline. It's divided into units, larger topics, and modules, smaller topics. Any of the material from Gen Chem 1 can be moved to Gen Chem 2 and vice versa. So it's pretty flexible in terms of ordering as well. Most instructors, there's wide variation in terms of ordering of the topics. So it's easy to change that up. Jump into the reaction stoichiometry module. In each module, there are usually between 5 to 10 or 12 pages. This is probably looking kind of familiar. Some of it may look familiar to you from OpenStax. You can see we have already a significant number of activities just from the very beginning of the module. So we try not to have like a ton of text before going into an example. So there's some intro pages that might be a little bit text heavy, but for the most part, they're very focused on activities. So this is, you have your standard example. We have also incorporated what we call interactive examples. So it's a little bit more visual way, an interactive way for the student to look at the material. Also mentioned scaffolding. The scaffolding is either in the way that the problems are set up. Question might include hints. So here we're going to have the student set up the dimensional analysis before they do the calculation. In the second Learn by Doing, we're going to scale back the scaffolding, so to speak, so they can ask for a hint if they need a hint. The questions give detailed feedback. So this particular one is if they had inverted the molar ratio, that's the answer that they would get, and the feedback tells them that specifically. We have embedded videos, and then most pages end with these "did I get this" activities. So the Learn by Doing activities provide scaffolding for the students, and the "did I get this" provide less scaffolding. So there's no hints. It's not set up in a stepwise manner. Upon an initial incorrect answer, the student is asked to try again. They're given some information as to how to get to the correct answer. And then on a second incorrect input, they get the full solution. Here's an example of an embedded PhET activity. With the PhET simulations, there's always an activity with directions for the student, tells them what to do with the PhET simulation. And then there's a couple follow-up questions that go with it as well. Again, starting with scaffolded Learn by Doing, and then moving into less scaffolded "did I get this" questions. This is a slideshow that shows the titration process, video that shows gravimetric analysis. And many of the modules end with these adaptive activities. So for the adaptive, this one is actually within the context of rocket fuel, basically. And if the student gets this answer correct, then it just tells them they're correct and they move on. If they get it incorrect, then it gives them the scaffolding. So, okay, well, let's take a step back. You didn't get it correct the first time. Here's some scaffolding for you so that you can try again. So these questions are adaptive for the student. At the end of each module and unit, there's a My Response and a quiz for the student. So wanted to talk briefly about the summative assessments. So we've done a lot of work with the summative assessments. They've been developed in question pools. So the student is going to get new questions for up to 3 times that they take the assessment. So many times instructors, like to give them additional opportunities and not just, the first time. When they take multiple attempts, they're going to get a new question. There's feedback with the quizzes as well. The initial feedback that they get is more of a hint for the student. And then the final feedback, which they'll get on their final attempt, they'll see the full solution at that point. There's different options for the assessments. Won't go into all of those now. There's ways to schedule all of the content. Again, a little bit too much detail now. There's a grade book that shows you student scores. So wanted to talk a little bit about the learning dashboard.
I'm just mentioning a couple of questions from the chat that's probably best for you to address. One is from Yu Ting about, can we alter the content in the existing pages, remove questions, content, embed videos, etc.? I think the short answer is yes, but it's not necessarily trivial. Sandy, or?
Yes, you can. So OLI does have an authoring tool where you can take the whole course and changes as you would like. Hal, do you want to say more about that?
He just put
Sure.
it in the chat.
Yeah, the current system that's being used today is modeled after the textbook publishing system. So it's a bit more monolithic than what you might be expecting. It's a separate system where you do your authoring and customization there, and then it gets published as a whole, and it isn't a live editing course or a live editing suite. To complicate matters, we're in the middle of shifting from that current model to a next generation model where live editing will be a possibility, and we're starting to roll that out for the fall. That's what we're hoping that people will start to adopt in the fall. That new platform is called Taurus, and you'll have a lot more control over what you can change. You can add things, you can remove things, you can insert videos, things of that nature, a lot more nimbly than you can in the system that Sandy is demonstrating today.
There's also a question from Stephanie about what you're showing us looks similar to what she's using, but there's no my response and end of lesson questions. I'm guessing that means she's using the open and free version.
Yes. So yeah, the open and free version does not have the end of module and unit assessments. If you're using the open and free version, it is the same exact thing, actually, except for it doesn't have the summative assessments.
Also, it doesn't give the student dashboard information, right?
Correct. It does not. Yes. Yeah, so the instructor's not getting any feedback on what the student is doing in the open and free version. Okay, want to talk briefly about the learning dashboard. Dave and Mark are going to talk about how they use the materials in the class and how they use the learning dashboard as well. So this is an overview of how students are doing for this particular module. It's separated by learning objectives. The red indicates that these students here have a low learning estimate. This would be a medium learning estimate, and this would be high. These aren't real students, so don't need to worry about the names. The gray indicates that they haven't done enough work in the module to for the system to determine what their learning estimate is. So you see you can click on the individual student and email them. It also breaks down the learning objectives into its sub-objectives. So the skills or sub-objectives, you can look at, what part of this larger objective are they having the most difficulty with? From there, you can pull up specific questions that go with that skill, and you can see how the students performed on that given question. You can also see participation. Many instructors will give a grade for the quiz, but they'll also give a grade for the students working through the module. So you can see participation percentages are not related to correctness. They're only related to the percent of activities that the student tried, regardless of whether they were correct or not. So there is a My Response set of questions at the end of each module. This is the time for a student to do a little bit of self-reflection. And for each of the learning objectives, they're going to think about, okay, how well do I feel like I'm performing on this given learning objective? There's also the ability for students to have some open-ended responses for the instructors to respond to.
One of the ways I mostly use it is I want to see how many students have done something and how did they do on the specific questions. So the learning dashboard has these summary views, but I often find just looking at how did they do on this question to be more useful. I think the next slide shows what pops up when you do that. Mm-hmm. This will show who, like A, B, and C, how many students chose A, B, and C. You can also see how many people are doing it. So 55% at the top would mean I really need to do something to get them to get in here. We often will pick if there's a question that's particularly problematic. Like this question 1, that's problematic enough that I might sort of start off class by saying, I noticed that half of the student, half of you got this question wrong. So let's talk about what goes on in this question. The other thing I want to make some comments on grading. I think it's always a challenge of if you put too many deadlines on things, then the students get unhappy with you, but I think they learn more. And so I'm always at this tension between, do I make them do it before class? That would be ideal for learning. But if you do that, you can get student pushback. One of our California colleagues, she does a thing where there's these questions where students can put in what were they struggling most with in this module. And so they're just providing feedback to the instructor on what they know and don't know about the module. And that's the only thing she requires them to do. And that seems to work quite well because it opens up communication and gives them a motivation to actually try doing the materials. I think there's probably as many ways to grade this as there are instructors in our system.
So this is just a little bit of a summary. I mean, Sandy already indicated, but the learning dashboard gives student participation data. It gives specific data on how students did on things, and you can look at it as sort of aggregate for your class or individual. And then I'll mention and show something about the My Response. That I think my main point would be the information from the learning dashboard allows you to modify your instruction based upon what it tells you. And if you are somewhat prone to trying to do more active learning in your class, have a flipped classroom model, it can support that reasonably well. If you want to do things, traditional way, it supports that as well. And since Sandy did mostly Gen Chem 1 stuff, I just picked a couple examples, an example, I guess, from Gen Chem 2. So those of you who teach Gen Chem 2 might know or might agree that students sometimes struggle with some of the equilibrium stuff. So this is the solubility and complex equilibrium unit. Here's the overall performance this is my class from a couple years ago. So if you look towards the bottom, 62 out of 77 students participated. Seems pretty good. But only 67% of the activities were started, so it's kind of up and down. Again, the green means pretty good student performance. Red is not very good student performance. Gray is they're not engaging or there's not enough data yet. And so you can sort of see maybe we need to spend the most class time on calculations with KSPs and solubility. And you can look a little bit more in detail. I'm just picking two of the learning objectives in more detail. This one, students seem to be doing fairly well, reasonably well with just calculating KSPs, starting with concentrations. You know, there's a little bit of a difference between the sub-objectives, but then determining the concentrations from the KSP, maybe not too surprisingly, was significantly harder for the students. You also have this where a high number of students did activities with calculations involving molarity and concentrations, but only about a third of the class did conversions between grams and moles in terms of solubility. It gives you some notion of maybe where to spend class time. I don't need to spend too much time on the things they're doing well on, and have more practice with the things that they are struggling. And then one last thing is these are specific student responses where they just tell you, here's what I'm struggling with. The data didn't show that they were struggling with KF calculations, but students self-reported that that was the case, and that's used as well.
I think we're going to talk a little bit about some of this data and some findings. So each one of these problems is tagged with a skill. We're collecting all of this data. We have had a large number of students using the courseware now for the last couple of years. So we have a lot of data to crunch.
So this is more giving idea of what we do with the data we get to try and figure out what's happening in classrooms and improve the material. One of the main things we look at, one of the things that's unique and I like most about OLI for classroom use, is it integrates the instruction with the practice. So when they start in an OLI module, there's no reason they should know it yet. They're reading a paragraph, they're trying some problem, but it immediately corrects them. So it keeps them more active. And that's also in our feedback. I tried way in the old days to have students read the textbook before coming to class, and that was a total, they hate that. You can have them do this before class and they don't mind it, but it gets us data on how they're learning specific topics. So for a skill in the class, like the ones Mark was showing you the performance estimates on, we look at how many questions are they getting correct the first time, and looking at the population as a whole. And if they improve, the more opportunities they have to engage with some topic, their percent correct goes up. So they make fewer errors and ask for less hints. And we've been able to break this down by different demographics, self-reported demographics from the students. So underrepresented, non-underrepresented, and then most of the unknowns didn't fill out the survey. A few of these people just chose not to answer that question. So this is a study or data from community colleges in California. And there's two main conclusions I wanted to show. One is this is the learning rate, which is the slope of this. Every time they do an opportunity, they engage with something related to that concept, how much do they learn? And all groups are the same on that, which is great. There's a little, they're coming in with a little bit less performance if you're coming from a worse high school or background. But to make up for that, you have to do 1.4 more engagements with the material. The average engagement is about 9, so it's like 10, 20% more to catch up. The bigger difference is that they do less. We think they have life, like there's things that are keeping them busy outside of class, that they just have less time to spend on the class. And that's where the biggest difference comes from. Poor preparation doesn't hurt their learning. That also relates to, you jump to the math one. So if you rank skills by more mathy, it's no surprise that in Mark's class, the one that they were struggling with the most was the most mathy, the solubility. So if you have a mathy learning objective, they start off with lower performance, but their learning rate is, if anything, faster. So having them come in maybe not as strong in math, the way at least we do it by supporting math in the context of chemistry, if they get something wrong, we give them lots of support to get the math, means that they can learn the math in place. I think it was equally probable that students who came in with weak math would have a harder time learning, but the learning rate's the same across all math levels. And it's just, they do have to do more to catch up, but they're able to learn the math content as well as the non-math content, just as well. To me, this is one of the most interesting results in this day. The other one was students who withdraw. So these are courses, these are schools where the DFW rate is quite high. A lot of people withdrawing. By far, the biggest predictor is not their initial performance. If they come in, they're not doing that well on the OLI activities, they're getting them wrong a lot. That doesn't predict that they're going to withdraw. The primary predictor of student withdrawal is not having enough time to work on the course. Now, the other thing we do with this is we use it to find out what topics are they learning. There is a difference in learning rate across topics. And then we go in and we modify the courseware to sort of figure out why is it they're not learning this as fast as other things. And we usually find, so we improve it and we will see if it ends up making any, helping the students.
Okay, just a little bit to finish up the data piece, and then questions, and also give you information about accessing the course yourself. In general, the students feel like the information is contributing to their learning. They said, we have a majority here said it was very significantly contributed to their learning. We also asked them about how much time they were spending in the courseware, and they spend a significant amount of time. And this is just a breakdown of the different components within the courseware that they found beneficial. So we can see the learn by doing, the quizzes, often, and the did I get this, often very beneficial, text and examples as well. So they're seeming to find the material very helpful. I want to make sure everybody has access information for the course, and take any other questions that you might have.
I'm curious for the instructors that had used it. I think it's Mark and David. How did you use this courseware to supplement your face-to-face class or a hybrid class during the semester? Like, do you assign things, or they're just a supplementary learning for students to play with? And then is it before or after you cover the content during lecture?
Want to go first, Dave, or you want me to?
Yeah, I guess I've tried a variety of different ways. It's definitely not, I don't want the students to view it as optional and supplementary. It's like a primary means of their learning. So we don't use an online homework system. We use OLI. We don't really have it. We have a recommended but not required textbook. And so we're assuming most of their reading of content and their practice is occurring in OLI or in homeworks that we give them and in our recitation activities. Whether we can get them to do it before class is tough. Ideally, if they do the module, like the reading part, but not the quiz before class, that's the behavior we try and get them to do, but we don't force them. And so, the data we're looking at is that the students who don't do it and don't spend enough time on it, it's affecting their grades. So our current plan is to show them the data and say, people who did not do well on the exam, this was because, there's a big correlation between the amount of time you spent in OLI and your exam score.
So pretty much what Dave said. I can't speak to this past semester since I no longer have students, but in previous years, OLI has been my textbook and the homework system. We have enough total module quiz and end of unit assessment questions that it pretty much is a full-on homework system. But yeah, it's been my primary source for student material. The engagement they get and the feedback they get is the super helpful thing. They essentially have kind of a tutor available at all times at some point. It as I mentioned before, it provides me with some pretty good information as to what to focus on in class, and that's super useful. And then I'm totally with Dave, and I think all our other instructors would have the same thing. It's really hard to get them to do everything before class you want them to, but and usually you just try to say, please at least go through the module activities so you've had some exposure, and that is very helpful. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Yeah, if you don't mind me asking, what do you currently do? I mean, before we used OLI, we used Sapling, and there was a homework they had to do every week in Sapling. And we basically replaced that with OLI.
Yeah, I have homework due every week, but I just give them like homework questions on Canvas and make them submit it by scanning their work. So it's very primitive, but I haven't done any online homework systems because they're quite expensive. So I've been looking for one that's affordable and not like $100 per semester for my students. So that's why I'm curious about how you use it.
And Ting just gave us an opportunity to talk about the affordability.
Yeah, it's $25 per student per semester. Yeah, quite affordable.
And also out of curiosity, so for these software, does the school, like I'm in the California Community College, and I know sometimes the financial aid covers textbook costs, but does these type of software, is it part of the financial aid system, or students have to pay out of their pocket depending on which special program they're in?
Yeah, that's dependent on whatever arrangement the school has. So we have lots of different arrangements at the moment where the students will pay for it themselves in most cases, but we have lots of engagements where we can make payment codes, they're like access codes, available in the bookstore, so that the students who must use their financial aid money in the store can purchase access there. And we have several inclusive access arrangements where there's no fee at all, and the material is part of their semester books and materials fee. And then there are other ones where it's simply grant funded, and again, there's no fee for the students, and then there's an invoicing to whatever party has the grant funds to cover the student access. Usually when there is something large like a departmental adoption, we're able to bring the price down just because there are so many students, and we're able to offer like a bulk rate.
Thank you.
Sure. So whatever you need to arrange, we can work out.
Also emphasize, we're a not-for-profit. This is all just funding to the support staff and keep the servers up and running.
Yep. It essentially just pays for keeping the lights on and keeping this going from semester to semester.
We're about at time. Any last minute questions or comments? I will be following up with everyone via email. I will send you this access information if you didn't get it from the chat. I'll also send a copy of the slide deck that we were using, as well as a copy of the recording. Thank you all for joining, and really appreciate it.